There's like a company that does robotics process automation, which is like anything that you can do with your mouse on your screen, they can replicate. So that was like the accessory to like ChatGPT. And that's a $3 billion public company. They're probably the outlier in terms of how large of companies I've worked with. I've typically worked with smaller companies.
That's Craig Stern. He was one of the first people to market for leveraging LinkedIn into lead generation. Craig is the CEO of Sunrise Leads and Content Wave, two companies committed to helping their clients establish credibility through content and also getting more leads into their sales funnels. On this episode of the podcast, Craig comes on to share his superpower of pitching something that nobody else has ever seen. He also talks about how he built a lead generation business, shares what it's like to recognize and seize an opportunity that no one else has tapped into, and he also shares some of the tools that he's used in the past for building his teams. Before the episode starts, be sure that you are subscribed so you never miss an episode. And with that out of the way, let's go to the interview. I want to just take a moment with the audience real quick and just make a statement. To date, I don't think we've had anyone on the show who has tapped into as many industries as you have with what it is you do. I know you've cultivated meetings with big names like Walmart, like Petco, bunch of different companies that I haven't even heard of that are big deals in their own industry, and yet you're able to cater to all of them. So what is it like, or what does it take when it comes to being able to connect with so many different industries and speak to their needs and deliver with what your product or service is?
Yeah, that's a great question. There's a lot of threads there. So one is like big and small companies. I'm probably underpriced with the big companies because I'm so lean. Something that I've learned in the last 5-6 years of running an agency is that even in the big companies, it's still just one person that's responsible for a certain KPI, right? Whether it's generating opportunity or leads. And if I have the intelligence to give them insights in our first couple conversations, that is the proof. And that's one of those things that is easy to say and not always easy to deliver on. So that's one thing from like catering to those different kinds of companies. I was looking at my client list, my results, 'cause I was redoing my sales deck, and it's all over the map. So there's like a company that does robotics process automation, which is like anything that you can do with your mouse on your screen, they can replicate. So that was like the accessory to like ChatGPT. And that's a $3 billion public company. And then they're probably the outlier in terms of how large of companies I've worked with. I've typically worked with smaller companies. I have another one. I'll just tell you the weirdest ones. Another one, or most unique, that's like a more of a positive word. Underwater football, underwater torpedo league. And these guys are awesome. They train like pro athletes and UFC fighters, and it came from an armed forces like training and getting people prepared to pass a test. So we did cold outreach to get like in front of professional sports organizations and like media companies. I think what has been the common ground is I'm able to take something complex and communicate it in very simple terms. It's like, tell me how this special purple, half unicorn, half zebra, like that you can only find in the clouds, is like the orange or apple that I eat every day, right? It's like, tell me how it's like playing baseball, and how do we pick the items that are relevant to their audience and make it fit. That's the skill set, is pitching things people have never heard of. And I've done that like ever since childhood, trying to convince my parents to let me do do crazy things all the time.
Well, let's go back to the very beginning. Is that the skill set that you decided to invest in to create your company? Like, is that what it takes to do what you've done?
It more came out of seeing what I'm actually good at and what I'm not after trying other companies. So in college, I had this idea for a mobile app that translated languages on text message. I filed a patent. I won a business plan competition, which is like Shark Tank style pitching. They have these circuits in college. You can go do that and compete. So I won. I had it built, and I realized, well, I don't want to be a product developer. I hate like testing and doing QA and working with developers, and project management's my worst skill. So that's ultimately what like led to failure. Uh, Also the fact that I like my previous experience was working at Chili's. So and so what propelled me though was like pitching and influencing and um just having like raw belief in myself and the thing to where like people would bet on me. That was always working for me. And I mean, I don't know. I've excelled, not to toot my own horn, but like I've excelled at a lot of things that are things I had never done before. So I feel like that was a good bet for people to make.
Mm-hmm. And that's something we've talked about on the podcast before, the importance of recognizing when you're an expert at something. There's that line of modesty and being humble, but also there's that line of, hey, I'm accountable to the fact that I know how to do this. I need to do something with it. Going to what you do now between the lead gen and Content Wave, where did that start? Was that born out of a career at Chili's?
So after the mobile app failed, I had a sunglasses company, which kind of worked in the sense that we had revenue, we sold it, but we weren't paying ourselves. And then I was doing just marketing projects on the side, and that was the only thing making money. And a guy that was like mentoring me kind of pointed out, he goes, so you spend all your time on this sunglasses company, it's called Solo Eyewear, and you're making no money, and you spend like 10 hours a week on marketing, and it brings you like $2,000-$3,000 every month. And I was like, yeah. And he goes, so do you like being poor? Like, or do you want to go make some money? And I really thought about it, and I was like, I've given you super long answers, but I think at that point I had always been okay with like the money will come. Let me just do the thing I love. And then at a certain point it shifted. It was a very specific moment when I couldn't pay for blueberries to give to my girlfriend's mom because she was going to make a blueberry pie that night. And I had no money in my car. I was like digging for change at the bottom of the seat in front of the Safeway. And I was just thinking, dude, this sucks. Like, if I'm so smart, how come I'm so broke? Like, and I was 29. And at that point, I kind of looked up to the sky and I was like, God, all right, I've never said this before, but I'm ready for money right now. Like, I want it today. I want money. I was like, the first time I was okay saying that. I had this weird spiritual, like, belief, or I don't even know, poverty mindset from generations where I was kind of thinking, I don't need to have money. Like, it's not the focus. It'll just come. And then I was like, well, it hasn't came yet. So maybe I do need to focus on it. Maybe I do need to say, hey, this is important to me. So anyways, that's how I got into like marketing consulting and then a marketing agency.
So we've had a number of businesses on where it's a humble beginning. It's a skill set, and then it grows into something much bigger. And those are some of my favorite stories to showcase on here. And everyone seems to have this moment where it clicks and you realize, oh, hey, I've made it. Like okay, that was then. Now I've done the entrepreneur thing for a while, and oh, hey, this is working. This isn't something that I'm aspiring to anymore. It's something I'm actively in. Like I've made it. What was that moment for you with what you're doing?
That moment came a lot later. So I had some success with marketing consulting, and then for about 2 years, and then I kind of failed it because I was just doing everything and I had no specialty. And so, honestly, the same problem. It ended up being a lot of project management. I wasn't good at like team building. So, or recruiting and hiring. And so then I joined a software company, and I was like, let me go learn from some guys that have done much bigger things. Let me see how they're reaching out to Fortune 500 and serving those clients and how it looks inside of a venture-backed company. So I joined this company. They had just raised $50 million, and there's this kind of a cool like karmic moment. It was actually a translation company that was using neural networks to do machine translation. So there it was like AI before generative AI before it was cool, man. So I was doing it. Like, so I got in there and I learned a lot. I managed a budget. I was shopping now for all the marketing agencies, and I was on the buyer side. And that was the most miserable I've ever been inside of that company for like many reasons, but not the one shining light was the how fast I learned. Learning is that opened my eyes to a new definition of learning. So I've always felt like I'm a fast learner. Now I had a $500,000 budget, and now I was running tests across every marketing channel and every cold outreach channel. Like, because I was responsible for meeting set and opportunity created. So I was also managing inside sales, which is not normal, which is why I was miserable because it was just a lot. And then SEO and trade shows and cold calling and cold emails and PR. And I had a budget and I was spending and measuring. And that's a different learning curve where it's like, hey, we just deployed hundreds of thousands of dollars. And now let's look at what, with all of our collective intelligence, like the best marketing agencies I could find, me, my boss, the CEO, our best thoughts, here's the output. And so that learning curve is way faster. It's like that opened my eyes to, if you say you're learning fast, how many tests did you run? Like, talk to me about your experiments in marketing and sales this quarter. If you don't have like 10 or a dozen, because that was like what I was doing, and then a lot of little ones in different channels, that's not fast learning. When I got the confidence, or when I was like, I'm doing it, I was starting to be miserable, and I was thinking, I need to find something this time that I think I can be the best in the world at. When that thing happens, I'm bouncing. And my wife was pregnant at the time, and I was making $80,000, which is not a lot in San Diego, definitely not a lot with a kid. And I still had all my college debt. If I can't support a family and that ends up hurting my marriage, I'm not going to be able to live with myself. If knowing I didn't try my hardest, if I try my hardest and I fail, I'll still have peace of mind. I'll be like, well, I gave it my best shot. So what that meant was, once I find the thing I'm willing to work, like weeknights after work, weekend mornings, Microsoft bought LinkedIn in 2016. And up till that point, it was just a resume site.
Mm-hmm.
There was zero activity going on. And I got in there looking at their search filter and their database. And I was thinking, this is an incredible database because we can actually see the people's faces. We get way more information about them. I can learn about them in 5 minutes. I can see who they are, a lot of them, and learn about them. And I was like, wow. And I can message them. So I was like, let me use this tool and reach out to 3,000 of these people. And I was like, oh, well, we just got 20 meetings like in a week. And I normally spend $4,000 to get 20 meetings.
Oh, wow.
And that cost me a few hundred in my time. Yeah. And then so I was like thinking, I bet I could train a virtual assistant to do this work. So then I went to the Philippines, not physically, but like went online, and I trained someone to run the tool. No, I think at first I started with like answer all the messages and book the meetings, because I realized, well, if this thing works, it's a ton of time responding to people and getting the meetings booked, and it takes a lot of like attention, even if you're not booking them. She did it, and then it was just baby steps of delegating more and more until I had like, I think she was running. Then I got like 2 clients. The client acquisition for me was really interesting too. I got clients super fast before I had a website. So what gave me the confidence, I think this is maybe a peak confidence period in my life, because when I was talking to prospects on the sales calls, I was like, here's what I do. I buy leads. This thing is outperforming everything that I buy. Here's what it costs. And they're like, all right. And there'd be some hesitation. At the end of the call, I'd show them a little demo and like examples. Again, pitching a thing people haven't heard of. And I was like, the only question in your mind, if I'm in your shoes, was like, that I'd be asking is, does this really work? And I was like, and if that's the only question, I'll put a guarantee on this. I'll get you 10 meetings by the end of the first month, or you can take your money back. And then like, they're like, okay, they say yes, or they'd say, well, they try to negotiate sometimes. I think I went from 2,000 and to 3,000 and guys would try to negotiate. And I was like, no chance. My prices are lower than I know what the industry rates are. And I'm about to increase them another 1,000 next month. So if budget is a problem, just let me know. We don't have to do this. Like I was just coming in and I had no website, no use cases, no testimonials. The confidence was through the roof and that's what sold. And it was just so interesting to have the credibility in a conversation with someone without any of that. So that was when I was like, not only am I here, but my belief was I could be one of the best in the world at this because this particular little thing is brand new. No one can say, hey, I've been doing this 20 years. Like I'm getting in early. I know how to move fast.
So I want to ask an industry question because this comes up in some of the other conversations I've had with entrepreneurs who try to outsource their lead gen. Quality leads. They seem to not have any trouble when it comes to generating leads, but then they start adding that word quality into their conversation. What is it with what you do and running into those kind of assuming that you've run into those kind of conversations when it comes to quality and what it takes to guarantee those 10 meetings by the end of the first month? Has that been a factor and has that been something that you found a solution for?
We don't really have an issue with lead quality because we get it defined so early up front that here's a good lead and a bad lead. And I think the only times I had issues in the beginning where I didn't communicate. I didn't really understand that, hey, even though we're going through great lengths, like it's never going to be 100%. And there'll be 1 to 3% of these people that are not just off, but it could be just way off. Like you might see a chef that somehow got in here and has nothing to do with like business. That's an extreme example, but I would always kind of like, as I got more into it, I was like, hey, let them know how this works. And so as I got more advanced, I was like, oh, let me just remind them, like, because they go, oh, who is this? They're off target person. They panic. And I go, oh yeah, okay. Thanks for pointing that out. Please keep letting us know. Also, like, here's the 3,870 that are on target out of the 4,000,
Mm-hmm.
right? There are more exceptions. Some people, if I have some people who are not really clear on who their lead is, and then they get into calls, and they're like, "Oh, they weren't ready to buy," or this and that, and then I go, "Yeah, I mean, that's something we don't know until we talk to them. Like, that's not a lead problem. That's just the name of the game. Some of these folks are ready, some are not, some are qualified, some are not. But here's what we can find out without talking to them, and that's what makes them on-target prospects."
And that's the other thing when it comes to leads. I can help you generate so much business, but what is your closing ratio when you have X number of leads? And when I'm talking to people who are running like sales heavy based businesses, you have to have sales to have business, but businesses that are very, very oriented towards, okay, tons and tons of leads, they're always talking about ratios. And so I can only imagine what that opportunity looks like for a lot of people that you've connected with as far as what the return on investment is based off those 3,000 out of the 4,000.
When we start lead gen, we'll typically ask, what's your average client worth? Or if you have like a enterprise client and a small business client, let's just separate those. How much are those contracts? And how long does it take to close them? Between the first time we set an appointment and then the time they sign the contract, right? So it might be like average timeline is 6 months. Small business clients are worth 20,000. Enterprise clients could be 150,000. You go, okay, great. And how many do you currently close? So we get all that, and then we go, all right, well, if we're going to get these many leads and you close 15%, because industry standards are like 15 to 20%. Most of our clients can close at 15%. Here's your ROI. With some of them, and what I'm getting to is what I'm starting to think about is a rev share on deals closed. So
Oh, smart.
just to have buy-in on their part, just to say, if you're like very scared, we can do a rev share and you pay us less up front, and then we get a percentage of the deals closed. So that's something I'm just starting to think about. It's an offer that's out there for sure. I think what it takes is I need to choose where we do best, because we've done so many diverse things.
Well, let's wrap things up here. I wanted to ask you one more industry-based question before we go to the close. What do you see the future of this industry looking like? Because I know you also have Content Wave. I know you're also doing other things.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think the future of what you do is going to look like?
I think it's dwindling for lead gen. I think it's getting harder and harder. I think that inboxes are getting more and more protected. I think your average person is going to start to have like very elite cold outbound capabilities. I would say it is the lowest effort, highest result sales or marketing activity, like fastest scalable, lowest cost that you can do. And so therefore everyone's going to try to take a swing at it. It's also not very difficult to like get started and get your feet wet. And I tell clients this, and they're like, "Hey, can you do cold outreach for us?" I'm like, "Yeah, but your odds are really low. Like, this is working against cold outreach. Whether you do it with me, whether you try to do it, whether you hire someone else, you have super low odds of success." And then you take someone else who has the website looks amazing, they're active on socials, they have a YouTube channel, they have a podcast. And if we pique curiosity on the cold outreach, we know someone's going to do a quick Google search or look at the LinkedIn profile. And if they just see those things, they might not look at any of it, but trust and credibility just went up. And people always say this. It's like, I know it works. We're just trying to figure out, do you work? Does it work for you? Can we work? Do we work? Like, that's what we're going to try to figure out, because this works.
Gotcha. So essentially, you're increasing touch points. You're throwing a broader net than just those cold outreaches.
Yeah. And then it's a way to stay in touch with like the 97% of people who are not ready to buy. Then you start your inbound channel.
Well, one of the questions that I like to ask each guest at the close is pertaining to goals. You know, Craig, you've shared your story from how you've started, what you do. What do you want the next 12 months to look like? What is it that you're hoping to achieve in the next year or so?
So I just have a personal sort of ambition to have more self-expression and help others have the same. So I've stayed away from self-promotion. For a long time, I've been lucky. I've been able to get most clients off referral. But now I have this internal challenge where I want to like express through podcasting, through YouTube, through like cool videos, creative videos that we can now do with AI, and like Runway ML. So that's one intention. And then part of that is helping others do it. And that's through Content Wave. And so we have launched multiple podcasts now, some virtual, so one cool one. We just built a studio inside of a shipping container. We've helped clients come up with super cool, like unique podcasts that I haven't really seen out there. I'm like excited to test different formats. So I'd say for revenue goal in the next 12 months is to get that to $1 million annual revenue. I don't know, man. Just keep enjoying myself every day. Up until that point, hopefully, it's the same amount of happiness today as it is then.
Well, good deal, and I'm excited to see it happen. For anyone, I know you mentioned earlier that you don't do a ton of social media and outreach, but for anyone who does want to connect with Craig or keep up with you somehow, what's the best way to do that?
LinkedIn.com/CDStern. That's where I'm most active right now. Yeah, and that's it. I'm only active on LinkedIn. Yeah, I'll be updating that soon.
That's an honest answer. Well, Craig, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your story and your business with us.
Awesome. Thank you.
If you want to follow Craig, his links will be down in the show notes below. And if you are new to the show, or if there's been any value for you out of this episode, be sure that you like, share, and subscribe so you never miss an episode. Also, for the audio listeners out there still, we are on YouTube now, so be sure that you come over, leave a comment, because that really helps us in the algorithm. Guys, episodes come out every other week on Wednesdays, but until then, thank you so much for playing the Business RPG.